John Hackett.
Has joined the conference.
Call the July 14th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please have a seat. Roll call, please.
Chairman Jacks,
Here.
Commissioner Barlow,
Here.
Commissioner Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Hassett,
Here.
Commissioner Meal, Commissioner Martin,
Here.
Commissioner Abbott,
Here.
Commissioner Alexander, here, Commissioner Morse, Vice Chair Gillette,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Thank you. Automated announcement message, please.
Anyone who has not signed in, please do so at the tables located in the lobby. Should anyone wish to speak, please complete a request to speak form, which is also located on the lobby table, next to the sign-in sheet. A request to speak form must be completed for each item you would like to speak on. Please note, there are stairs on the right, left, and center aisles, and we ask that you use caution when using the stairs. There is also a ramp located to the audience's left. If anyone has written comments, exhibits, petitions, photos, or letters they intend to present at today's meeting, have 17 copies and give them to a staff member at the back of the auditorium. Staff member, please hold up your hand for the audience. If you do not have 17 copies, you may use the overhead camera to present your documents. Please place your documents on the podium and line it up with the arrows indicated. If you want your documentation to go on record, you must hand them to the clerk after your presentation with the agenda item number clearly marked on the documentation. Members of the public cannot speak to staff members that are seated at the table with microphones during the meeting. If you have questions, please see the staff member located in the back of the auditorium. All speakers will be limited to 2 minutes to make their presentation statements. Everyone, please turn off all cell phones or place them on vibrate during the meeting. If you must take a call, please leave the meeting area and go outside to have your conversation. We also ask the audience to refrain from talking with one another during the presentations and discussions. Today, the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear public testimony and then forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Everyone attending the meeting is asked to remember that the administrative building and campus are tobacco-free areas, which means no smoking is allowed from curb to curb. No food or drinks are allowed in the auditorium except for bottled water. If there are any items remaining on the agenda, the Commission will break for lunch for 1 hour per the Chairman's discretion.
The items with a recommendation made by the Commission will be heard by the Board of Supervisors on Tuesday, August 11th, 2021 at 9:30 a.m. in the same location, with the exception of any continued items. With that, we'll move to item 1.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Item number 1 is an evaluation of request for a rezone of a portion of assessor's parcel number 402-77-010G from an AR 10A agricultural residential 10-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR agricultural residential zone to allow for a minor land division in the scenic vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Is the applicant here today with us? No, I do not see an applicant. We'll open up for public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would wish to speak on item 1? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Does any commissioner have a question or comment at this time for item 1? Hearing none, the chair will now call for a motion. Item 1.
Motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Motion by Commissioner Martin. Looking for a second? Second by Commissioner Meal. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 2A.
Item 2A is an evaluation of a request for an amendment to the Mojave County General Plan and an amendment to the Desert Hills Fire District Area Plan from an MR, Medium Density Residential Land Use Designation, to GC, General Commercial Land Use Designation for Assessor's Parcel Number 120-05-144 in the Lake Havasu vicinity. Staff has received 19 letters of opposition on this item. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Thank you. Is the applicant here today? Would you like to speak on this item, sir? Yes, please. If you'd give us your name and address.
My name is Luke Still. I live in Lake Havasu at 2430 Wood Lane. I'm one of the owners of Desert Land Group, and we're here representing the potential buyer of the property today. This rezone is so that we can go to a commercial use. The property sits on the highway. It is a very good use for boat and RV storage. The market right now is full in Lake Havasu, so there's a lot of folks that are trying to develop boat and RV storage. This particular location suits that need really well from a highest and best use standpoint. I understand we did get a lot of letters of opposition. There's really 3 main things that were mentioned. It was traffic impacts from Hyde Park, which comes off of the highway, which is where this development would go on to, and going through the residential neighborhood, and then also just the general impact of traffic there. Also, the other things that were mentioned were the potential diminution of value, which we would like to address today. It's maybe better to address it in the next session 2B, where we're talking about the actual zoning change, but I can address it now if you'd like. But we're here today really to try and work with the neighbors, and we understand some of the concerns, so we think there's some things we can do to mitigate that. The buyer, Mr. Hughes, is with us today. We also brought our traffic engineer today, Scott Kelly. So I'd like them probably to speak, if it's okay, during the next issue. This is just the general plan amendment, but we do hear the concerns, and we plan on addressing those concerns to the best of our ability. But ultimately, from an impact to the neighborhood, from a residential standpoint, storage is a very quiet neighbor, and it actually has one of the lower traffic impacts that we could put there for a commercial type of use. And certainly from a highest and best use being located on the highway, with that much traffic and that much exposure, a commercial use is the highest and best use of the property. I don't see a residential use right up against the highway like that being the best use, and it certainly doesn't fit the pattern of uses up and down the highway in that area. So with that said, I think it'd be better if when this issue is presented for the zoning change, we can maybe address some of those issues with the traffic engineer and with the owner. And then we also have the realtor who is also related to the owner of the property here, and he would like to address the zoning change issues as well. So if that seems like the right process to you, that's how we would proceed.
Is the board comfortable with those other individuals addressing this issue as we move into it?
Yes, I would prefer that.
Okay. We'll proceed then, call up the next person.
Okay. I'm going to have Scott Kelly, he is our traffic engineer, come up and talk about some of the concerns regarding traffic.
Okay, thank you. Your name and address, please, sir.
Scott Kelly with Greenlight Traffic Engineering. Address is 14050 North 83rd Avenue, Suite 290 in Peoria, Arizona. 85381.
Okay, thanks. And we're going to try to keep our comments to 2 minutes. We have a lot of people that want to speak on this today.
Will do. Thank you. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, in terms of the traffic that is going to be coming out of this site, we're looking at roughly 41 trips a day on average that will be at this site. Comparing to that to what it's currently zoned as residential, if it were to go in as quarter-acre lots for the 6 acres there, we'd be looking at roughly 240 homes. Those homes would generate 280 trips per day, so roughly 7 times the trips that this particular site would generate as RV and boat storage. So you definitely have more traffic with an alternative use. This is, as was mentioned, one of the lowest uses and impacts to traffic that you could potentially have for this particular parcel. There are also a lot of concerns in terms of safety of the Hyde Park and SR 95, State Route 95 intersection. We looked at the crash data in the last 5 years, 2016 to 2020. There were 3 crashes that occurred in the vicinity of the intersection, or 4 crashes, excuse me, in the vicinity of the intersection. The officers coded those as all not related to the particular intersection. One strike was an animal strike. The other 3 were rear end crashes. All of the crashes resulted in no injuries. So in terms of the actual safety of this intersection, there's been a very low incidence of crashes in the vicinity. None of them have been related to the intersection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Steele, next speaker.
My name is Christopher Hughes. I'm with Milestone Land Company. I represent the buyer. My address is 15904 Wilkes Lane, San Diego, California 92127. And you know, our desire today is really to express our desire, actually, to listen to the neighbors. We did read. I have personally read all of the letters of opposition that we received since yesterday. And so in that regard, one of the questions was, or one of the concerns was, would we end up pushing traffic through their neighborhood? And we certainly don't want our tenants to do that. To that end, we would definitely be willing to install a right turn only onto Hyde Park out of our driveway, which would feed the traffic out of our facility towards the 95. So it would, you know, potentially alleviate those concerns that you know, the residents of that area would have. Beyond that, we'd be willing to work with ADOT in terms of what we could do on the corner, but that is really up to ADOT. But essentially, though, it is our desire to hear, to listen, and to respond proactively to the concerns of the neighborhood. Like I said, we want to be a good neighbor. And in that regard, I also want to bring up Mr. Matzdorf, who represents the current owner. He's a broker and can tell you about the history of that property.
Thank you.
Good morning. Lenny Matzdorf, 3394 Candlewood Drive, Lake Havasu City, Arizona, 86406. I represent the seller of the property, which is my dad and my aunt. The property has been in the family since about 1970, so about 50 years. The family had sold the property to the developer of Lake Ridge, late 80s, early 90s. Hyde Park Road is actually an easement that was dedicated to Lake Ridge that the family had given them so that they would have a third entrance into Lake Ridge. We're obviously very concerned about the community. I even had my wedding at Lake Ridge at the clubhouse 27 years ago. And Chenoweth Drive is named after my grandfather there. So we definitely want to see what's best for the area. I was very surprised there was any opposition whatsoever because storage units, people that call me on this property, lots of different various things, convenient mart, car wash, all kinds of things that could possibly be there with C2H zoning, which is typical along Highway 95. I live at the south end of Lake Havasu, pretty close to the highway, just like Lake Ridge, and there are storage units along Sweetwater. The best buffer I could ever ask for in that area. It's a good buffer as far as highway noise, and also the traffic is very, very limited. So I cannot really see if they got their wish to not change the zoning and did residential, there would still be more traffic with that impact. So honestly, I feel that the storage unit is the best possible and highest use for that property. And this is property they've been paying taxes on for 50 years, and obviously they want to see the highest and best use for this property. So I'll be glad to answer any other questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you. Do any
Mr. Chairman,
commissioners
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
You don't have to drive through Havasu to make this statement. There's a lot of storage, boats and RV there now. What is the occupancy and what is the need for more of the kind of units you're talking about?
I don't have the details, specifics on occupancy, but I know right now if you try to call and get a storage unit, you'd be lucky if you've got one. So, yes, it's extremely hard to get, and in fact, I have other property I could build storage units on, and I keep on thinking that when is it going to quit? But I'd say Lake Havasu is probably one of the toy capitals of the United States, and people with boats and toys, and as Havasu grows, you need that many more storage units. So there's definitely a need for it. There's not much property left to do such a thing, and especially with highway access there.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time by any of the commissioners? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. We have several people that have signed up to speak on this item. I'd like to call Mr. Christopher Hughes. Speak, please.
That was me.
Okay,
I
I'm sorry, I
already
didn't catch
provided
that.
comments and happy to answer any questions that any of the members of the community
So
have.
we're good there. And Mr. Alan Tyson, any other comments?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Alan Tyson. I live at, pardon me, I live at 2308 Hyde Park Avenue. And, you know, people can throw a lot of numbers around. What it was back then, what it's going to be in the future. My wife and I bought a home here, our first home, in 1978. And we just recently moved to Havasu full-time in July of 18. Because we got tired of the cluster in Southern California, for the lack of a different term, traffic-wise. The neighborhood we lived in there for 45 years, we lived between two major streets. Over the years, people figured out a way through the neighborhood to eliminate going through two signaled intersections. That street turned into almost a major commuter street through our neighborhood. We had kids playing ball, kids riding bikes. It got to a point to where the neighbors would put out cones, slow down, kids playing, whatever the case may be. In regards to Hyde Park, if you go east on Hyde Park towards 95, and I'll stand corrected on this, you can probably make a safe left-hand turn on a northbound 95 at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Otherwise, the traffic flow is large, to say at least large, and it's only getting worse. If a vehicle pulls out of there, and let's say hypothetically he's waiting to make a left-hand turn onto northbound 95, he's going to create a backup on Hyde Park. So let's say another person is coming out of the storage area. They're going to travel down Hyde Park to Kingsbury, over to Kensington to turn right on Chenoweth, which would put them at the signaled intersection at Chenoweth and 95. So I can't help but think that in time, that's going to become the main artery, maybe not so much in, but to get out of the storage facility. That's pretty much all I have to say, but I really and truly hope that people take a look at this from a humanistic standpoint. That was zoned residential to be residential. We have tens of thousands of acres of land that can be developed for storage. And I have no problem with that. But I think it is inappropriate to put it right on top of a residential neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. John Hayes?
Good morning. My name is John Hayes. I live at 2369 Hyde Park Avenue, Lake Ridge Estates in Desert Hills. I have some concerns about this. I've lived there for quite a while now, and the traffic I'll just touch on because it's been mentioned a little bit, but the traffic on Highway 95 is extremely heavy. It's not unusual now to see it from morning until late afternoon where it's backed up past the entrance to Lowe's across the street, people waiting for the traffic light to change. So yes, a lot of people do take shortcuts going through Lake Ridge. Currently, there are 114 homes in Lake Ridge Estates. There's one lot that's not been developed yet. Some of the residents come and go, but there's a good number that live there full-time, year-round. I'm one of them. So another concern, there's a right-of-way, as along most highways, roadways, businesses, for utilities. There's utilities underground. Lake Havasu City has a large water main that goes through. I believe it's for affluent coming from the treatment center going back to town. You can see there's manholes along there. Access to that. That's one of the concerns. Flood area. Most of Lake Ridge Estates was in the floodplain up until a few years ago. FEMA and Mojave County Irrigation, which is managed by the supervisors, made a lot of changes and things and made some updates. But as they built Lake Ridge Estates, they built a channel that goes around it. This is prior to this development where they were able to resolve a lot of the problems. And it looks like, according to the diagram that was sent, or the drawing, I understand it's a rough sketch, if you will, but you can see that it's right next to the channel, and it looks as if there's a structure that's about to be built, that's intended to be built there. And my question is, will this affect the floodplain and the flow of water? Will it change people's insurance? Because mine was, I was able to get out of the floodplain. I just take a few more seconds, if I may, please. So noise is another concern. We live in Mojave County, outside the city limits. We have the car dealers across the road. Sometimes there's so much noise coming that we had to, call a sheriff's office or whoever. Will the noise be a consideration? There are houses that are on the other side of the channel that are within 100 feet of where their proposed development, and I'm being kind there because it's more like 80 feet, the distance between the rear of the houses to the property line where they're considering investing. So, and then water, I saw EPCOR was there this morning, I guess doing a survey, and water is a problem in that end of Lake Ridge Estates, I will tell you. And if I had a commercial business, I'd be very concerned. Also, fire protection. I would hope they're going to put a sprinkler system in if this is approved. They should look into that. EPCOR has said for the past 7 years they intend to put another main along the highway, but I know because I'm the last house on that water main, and when the water goes out, it takes me a day sometimes to get it back. So just another concern. So, and then if the zoning is approved, rumor has it, and I know you can't go by rumors, you can't, you have to wait to see it's verified. If the zoning is changed, will they be able to put commercial property, a shop in there to repair boats and things? Just a concern I have as a resident and many of my family members. We have 4 houses in development, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hayes by the commissioners? No? Okay, thanks. We have Mr. Scott Kelly. Any other comments? You good? Okay. Do we have any other individuals that would like to speak on item 2A? Yes.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. My name is Robert Ragland. I live at 2303 East Kingsbury Drive in Lake Ridge Estates in Desert Hills. The street in question end in my driveway, And my concern is the same as some of my neighbors that have shared, and it's, in my opinion, virtually impossible to turn northbound onto the highway from Hyde Park safely. And I'm also concerned that people bringing their boats from the state park, from Windsor Beach, that would come up London Bridge Road to Chenoweth, would turn in on London Road into Lake Ridge Estates to drive through to get to the storage yards. So anyway, I have the same concerns. I'm not anxious to see a lot more traffic through our neighborhood. So thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you. Any other speakers on item 2A? Yes, come forward, please.
My name is Johnita Tyson. I live at 2308 Hyde Park in Lake Ridge Estates, and I'd like to speak on the senior citizens in our neighborhood, which is majority of senior citizens. Oh, and by the way, there's like 114, not 240 homes, and of those homes, there's only about a third of that live there full time. So traffic is not heavy on Hyde Park right now at all. You barely see cars go through. There are a lot of seniors in our neighborhood. That's our form of exercise, is to walk in the streets in Hyde Park, in Lake Ridge Estates. We are one of the few areas that have sidewalks. And because our streets are so narrow, people that do come to do work on the houses or whatever, they actually pull up on our sidewalks. So we've had a number of seniors that have fallen because they have to leave the sidewalk, walk into the street, and back up. My concern is if, because of where the opening is centered for the development that wants to be put in, it's right at the corner of Hyde Park and Stratford. Those streets are not even, there wouldn't even, if there was two boats, two motorhomes that are staged there waiting to get in, they would have to park where even a medical service couldn't get through because the streets are narrow. My concern is they're going to be parking on our streets waiting to get into that area. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous right now. I think most of the other things that I had, I actually feel that it was, I don't know how often you have these meetings during the year, but I feel that it was not an appropriate time because there's only such a few many people that are there right now to even come up here and speak on it. Most of them are snow or winter visitors, and so thank you for your time. I've run out of time.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. No, I think we have someone else who wants to come up and speak. Thank you. Come on forward.
Well, it is.
Thank you. My name is Neil Rigger. I live at 2325 East Chelsea Street. I've lived in Lake Ridge Estates for approximately almost 6 years. And I've looked at this drawing that was given, that we received from the people that have spoke. And Hyde Park is going to become a problem if the entrance to this facility is off Hyde Park. I wish I brought my pictures, but I didn't. Hyde Park, as you make the turn to come on to Hyde Park off 95, goes down like this. And if you get into about the center of where they want their entrance, it's about 6 foot high. So they'd have to grade this, really take a long ramp to get into it. And where's the security gate? Where are these vehicles going to sit while they're waiting for this gate to go open? They're going to sit on Hyde Park, blocking Hyde Park, going into the residential area. Wrong. It's going to create a problem. And getting out on 95 alone, going north, is horrible. And if you're out there with a boat trailer, an RV, it's going to create a problem, and it's going to create a problem for the residents of Lake Ridge Estates. This may be a money-making deal for some people, but for the people of Lake Ridge Estate, it is not right. We should have a little more consideration for the people living there, where traffic would not get backed up coming and going off Hyde Park. To me, after I looked at this, a better place would be to have an entrance, if this took place, off 95. You go in off 95, you come out, which would mean they'd have to do something with the highway, rezone it, remark it, and everything. The easier way to do this is do it off Hyde Park. But it's going to create a traffic problem. It's going to create a traffic problem for all the residents. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions for? No? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 2A? Okay, close the public hearing. Do any of our commissioners have questions or comments at this time for item 2A?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask, how long has this been zoned for residential?
At this time, I am not wholly aware when the RE, current designation RE, residential recreation, was put on this property. I could ask maybe some of my colleagues that have access to a computer if we could check that real quick.
I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gillette. As far as I know, had that zoning 25, 30, at least 30 years.
Thank you.
That's to the best of my knowledge.
Commissioner Meal?
I have a question for staff. Excuse me. The issue of highest and best use has been brought up by Mr. Still. Okay, see his point. Is there a way to change the zoning less boat storages?
Chairman Jackson, Commissioner Meal, I'm afraid I'm not quite understanding your question, as in a separate type of zoning that would allow for less intense items?
Where I'm going is that instead of boat storages, go for storefronts. Because if you open the door for boat storages, it's going to be as you've already seen, and it's only a part of it. Going to be a lot of opposition. This way, both sectors get what they want.
Okay. The zoning does designate the types of uses that are allowed on this. I do not have the zoning ordinance in front of me. C2H, the proposed zoning, it would allow for storefronts as well. I believe for this type, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the next lowest commercial designation, C2, would also allow for this type of storage as well. So as it stands, either type of zoning, of commercial zoning, that would be appropriate for this parcel, assuming this general plan amendment goes forward, would allow for that, for those kinds of uses.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Commissioner Meal? It is possible, Arizona law does allow for you to rezone a property and withhold some of the uses that would normally be associated with that zone if you put a development schedule on the development. Yeah. I don't know that staff would recommend that right now. If the concern, the applicant has requested to be able, I mean, he's requested the zoning to do boat storage and RV storage. I don't know that I would advise you to go ahead and approve it minus, you know, the commercial minus those uses. If the commission has concern about those two particular uses, then it might be worth considering leaving the status quo for right now and having the applicant come back with another proposal.
Okay, let me throw this into the mix too that happened at this board when I first got on it. According to the powers that be at that time, was told up front, you can't use common sense. Sorry. Is where you can't use common sense when you are judging land. Okay, well, if you can't use common sense, then a lot of the public is going to be put into jeopardy. Oh, but that doesn't matter because we're talking about the land. Well, common sense has to come in somewhere, people.
Chairman Jacks, if I may, just address some of the items that have been raised. The mention of best use for the property is really a beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. So, excuse me, best use is really determined by the applicant, by the owner of that property. Basically, staff, once we receive the application of this is a rezone in order to do this use on this property, we look at it as staff to see if it meets our requirements in order to process it. If it meets all the requirements that we have in our process to present it to the commission, we do so with a recommendation for approval. We don't typically get into discussions with the applicant of, well, what about this instead? They have a number of other reasons why they have proposed a certain use for that property. We look at it just from an objective point of view of, does it fit the requirements? In this situation, they have a use that they're proposing for boat storage and storage on this property. In order to allow for that use, we explain that a plan amendment and a rezone would be required for that. In going through that process, they met the requirements of the plan amendment and the rezone for us to be able to recommend approval for that, and that's why it's in front of the commission here. As far as common sense, we hope that you use common sense in all of the actions that you perform on this commission. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Morton.
Do you think we could get the applicant's traffic engineer, was that your title? To address perhaps the gate access that the last public speaker was mentioning?
How many acres is this?
Are the engineer for?
I think you're asking a design question, and so the engineer has studied two roads.
Okay.
So the engineer has studied the specific traffic impacts based on the density of what we've planned on that site. And we really were trying to, I don't think we needed to provide a detailed site plan, but we were trying to do that in the interest of transparency, thinking that this is actually a small impact compared to any other kind of commercial use or even the existing zoning for recreational, residential recreational. But I'll have Chris kind of address, I think the question you're asking is how far the runway is if traffic is going to get stacked.
Access, and say on a busy weekend where you could have, two boats and trailers trying to access the gate and
Correct.
clogging up a bottlenecking?
And ownership is definitely willing. We put that access as far off the highway as we could to prevent any kind of stacking issue as far as coming in from the highway. And also the gate coming into the facility has more than enough room for more than one car. So we've tried to address the stacking issue. Again, traffic impacts for these probably are kind of like...
Well, I would say it would be more than one car, because if you have a truck towing a boat or an RV, that's not just one car. Those are...
Correct. So we actually asked our engineer. Now, the traffic engineer doesn't do the design. That's the civil engineer, and that's the architect. But we've asked our engineer to create stacking for vehicles that are being towed, specifically what you're asking. And we want enough stacking for at least 2 at our gate. And on top of that, there's more than 100 and some feet from the highway down to the turn from Hyde Park into our lane.
Okay, I have another question. Has the subject come up where Hyde Park would be closed off from the residential neighborhood like Canterbury is, so that there is no traffic, boat traffic going through their subdivision?
What we're willing to do as developers, and would welcome the conditional, the condition as part of our approval, is we're willing to limit anybody coming out of our development turning left into their neighborhood. That's a concern that a lot of them have brought up. We both, ownership agrees that is a concern that we can address and mitigate. And we're willing to do that with a right turn only out of our park, which only gets you onto the highway, so that people aren't coming out of our project and going through the neighborhood to get over to Chynoweth.
I have a question for staff. Is that something that could be a part of the approval, that stipulation would be in there as far as traffic flow, or not?
Chairman Jacks, Commissioner Martin, if I may just add a couple of items to the discussion as well, is this property, in order, basically right now we're looking at the plan amendment and the rezone. If approved, then they would move forward with a site plan. That site plan would be reviewed by Mojave County, but it would also be reviewed by ADOT, and ADOT would have the opportunity to either grant access or not grant access off of 95. So I would imagine that ADOT's team would be working with the civil engineers and working with the traffic engineers to determine what that stacking needs to be in order to not inhibit 95 and cause undue impact. With regards to the right turn in, right turn out, I believe we could add that as a condition of approval for the rezone, along with a condition that no access be granted to Hyde Park, that all access would be off of 95 and would need to be permitted by ADOT.
Would that work for the developer?
Just to be clear, we're willing to give up access into the neighborhood. We were still hoping to have access on Hyde Park as a right only onto Hyde Park, so we didn't go through the neighborhood at all. Hyde Park is, I'm not sure of the exact distance, maybe 200 to 300 feet long from the highway to the neighborhood. We're looking at putting our development as far off of that as we can for the stacking reasons that you're concerned about. And we're also putting stacking area coming onto our site. What we're willing to do, and what we would be happy to do, is to say that you can't come out of the development and take a left turn where it would take you into the neighborhood. You can only go right, which gets you to the intersection of Hyde Park and Highway 95. And from there, the other concern I heard from the neighborhood was that they don't think it's very safe to take a northbound turn. I mean, that again comes, I think, back to ADOT would give us direction on that. I don't think we can self-impose that even if we wanted to. But the other issue brought up is only allowing access onto Highway 95. That's, again, a little out of our control. That's going to have to be an ADOT-related issue.
Okay, thank you. Any?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Are you planning on using this entire parcel for storage?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a possibility that you could have an area where when you turn in to park, so that the parking isn't on the street?
Yeah, there's not going to be any parking on the street. Everything will be behind our gates.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is when they're on Friday.
Yes.
Everybody's going to be coming in to pick up their boats and take them to the lake.
Correct.
Okay, on Sunday or early Monday, everybody's going to be bringing their boats back to put them in storage for the week or 2 weeks, whatever, before they come back. So when you have that kind of traffic coming in, and we can see the traffic increasing every day in Lake Havasu, so there's a lot of traffic on Friday coming in and Sunday leaving, you're going to have some place for that line of cars or line of boats, whichever way you want to call it, to be.
Yeah, so that was what I was explaining earlier. We actually have stacking on our own site. So you have,
Yes,
you
that's
have,
what I
you have
meant.
room before you hit the gate to where you can stack onto our site instead of stacking just onto Hyde Park.
Right, okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions I can answer?
Commissioner Martin?
Okay, so can we clarify this? If Hyde Park were closed off where Lake Ridge begins, and the residents of Lake Ridge could use London, Kensington, just to avoid any type of RV or boat traffic going through the neighborhood, could that be closed off?
We're willing to even install a curb that would essentially make it impossible for our customers, our clients, to take a left off into the neighborhood. So yes is the answer to that. And we can do that with a physical barrier that would stop them from going left.
Chairman Jacks, if I could just clarify a bit, I believe Commissioner Martin, you're asking if actually the road could be closed at the subdivision.
Yes.
And I would respond to that no, the road would not be closed. That road provides access to that subdivision, 295. I don't believe we could get public works support to close Hyde Park Road or county supervisor support to close Hyde Park Road. I believe what's being proposed is similar, what they call a pork chop. What a pork chop does is it forces you to make that right turn and doesn't allow a left turn there. So I believe that's what's being proposed rather than actual closure of Hyde Park Road.
Well, because the subdivision below Lake Ridge is Canterbury, and that's basically a gated community with no
They did that a little
access.
bit differently. They have private streets there, so that's why they gated theirs off. I think to his point, that's a public street, so we wouldn't have any control over that at all. What we can control is what's on our site, and we can create a physical barrier that stops people from leaving our site and going into the neighborhood, but that's as far as we physically can control.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Yes, Commissioner Mill?
This Hyde Park, is there a way to block off that the subdivision from that proposed boat storages with the okay of the fire department?
There's already a physical barrier in the drainage easement that's between us, and it's a big concrete culvert. We're also going to have a secure property, so it's going to be fenced 100% around it. All we can do is install a gate. We can't get off of our property to block anything to do with the subdivision, but we can, when you exit our property, put a curb in that effectively pushes people out to the right to where they can't take a left and go into the neighborhood. And we're willing to do that.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Alexander?
Is there any feasibility to having a different ingress egress than this into the homes there? Could you do it at the other end? Is that feasible or not feasible?
We did study that. The problem becomes it's, again, outside of our control. It's an ADOT issue. If we could actually exit, the only other way we could exit is onto Highway 95 is the only other potential exit. That would be beyond our control. If ADOT would let us have that ingress and egress, then that's something we would certainly consider. But when we looked at it from an engineering and feasibility standpoint, it was more difficult. And it seemed like Hyde Park was an existing ingress and egress onto Highway 95. Putting another one close to it might add more congestion. But again, that's outside of our control. That we would listen to that if ADOT said yes to that.
Any other questions from commissioners on this item? Would the
Thank you.
Thank you. Would the staff have a modification to the motion that would include some type of statement on egress, ingress? Any recommendations on that?
Commissioner Jacks,
Yes.
staff would recommend that any alterations that would affect the site itself, we would want to tag those on to the rezone, item 2B.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion?
I have a question for staff.
Yes.
When I saw this, I went down and looked at that property. My wife had an appointment there. And I see your statement says what I'm going to say. Medium density residential. That's what these people that came in here and objecting to. They bought property in there where it's medium density residential. And now we're talking about allowing boat storage. That doesn't come close to being medium density residential. I have a real problem with coming up with any recommendation to allow that to be changed from medium density residential. It's been established. It's been settled. And somewhere within the rules and regulations, I don't know them like staff knows them, but I've heard them come up. You can't come in and build a Marriott by someone who's just built a 10,000 square foot house and got approval to do that. They don't mix. And we're in this same category here now, and I have a real problem with this. So that's my statement about it.
Any other comments?
Yes, I have a comment. I understand that there is a shortage of storage units in Lake Havasu and the surrounding area. I also understand that a lot of Havasu, the traffic goes through residential neighborhoods. But I also agree with my fellow commissioner that you have to take into consideration the people who bought before and what their desires were and what they expected when they bought their property. And so for that reason, I am not going to vote yes for this.
I'd just like to make one other statement. Probably a stupid statement to a lot of people, but I bought my first boat in 1964. I've had a boat ever since. It's not easy to pull a boat just in anywhere. And with the traffic that's now going up and down the main thoroughfare there, I see it every time I go there. There's a problem with getting boats in and out of storage units, as I see it today.
Any other comments by commissioners?
A question
Commissioner
for
Meal?
staff. For the gentleman who said as where staff that approved it. Did any of this prior conversation ever enter into your thoughts on that okaying the change?
Commissioner Meal, if you're referring to as to whether we consider it the best use for the area or not, all staff really takes a look at is the request of the property owner, does it match with what our code allows for? That's primarily our function with this. We are not the people to decide as whether it's a good fit or not. All we take a look at is
It's just the dirt.
is it okay within the rules?
I understand now. Okay.
I have a comment or a question to that comment. Do you have a responsibility recommending
Medium density.
general commercial right next to medium density residential? What's your responsibility there?
Chairman Jacks and Commissioner Abbott, Jeff Haas from the County Attorney's Office. I just want to clarify what the responsibility of staff is, because those questions are coming up. The responsibility of staff is to determine whether a proposal from an applicant meets the rules as written and required. In this case, they've reviewed the rules and they've determined that the way to do this, the legal way for them to do this, is they have to go through both the A and B process here on item 2. They don't take a position on whether it's right or whether it's wrong, that's the function of this board. Whether that's a policy determination for the Planning and Zoning Commission to make and later the Board of Supervisors to make. They are only here to recommend to the commission whether it meets the requirements of the rules or not. They don't take a position from a policy standpoint on whether it's right or wrong, what the policy should be.
I'm not
Kelly?
questioning whether it's right or wrong. I'm just questioning it. Does it meet the requirement to recommend general commercial where medium density residential has been established and homes purchased by all these people that have an objection to this project?
Commissioner Commissioner Abbott, we were able to recommend approval on the area plan and general plan amendment on this due to the fact that immediately to the south, the parcel along 95, it also has a general plan designation of general commercial. So since there is a piece of property that is immediately adjacent to it, it would be considered a compatible use to the immediate area.
My question there would be, was that property that's immediate adjacent to it done properly? You're basing another opinion on something that to me is questionable.
Chairman Jacks, if I
Yes,
may,
go ahead.
Commissioner Abbott.
You can always straighten me out.
No, I appreciate the questions, and ultimately, they're good questions, and it's a good discussion to have, and that's why we are here. Basically, the applicant has come forward with a use that they're proposing for the property. In order to install that use or develop that use on the property, the current general plan and the current zoning does not allow for the use that they're proposing. So the best way for them to remedy that is through a general plan amendment and a rezone. That's the purpose of this meeting is to address that, to make it known to the public so that they can come in, offer their comments, and then ultimately the commission looks at it, considers all options, considers all comments, and then makes a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Staff, in reviewing this specific case, as Mr. Kelly mentioned, the property is along a highway. It's along Highway 95, which generally you will see commercial along highways. Along with being on Highway 95, to the immediate south of this property is general commercial plan or general commercial use, and it continues down Highway 95 to the south as well. Immediately across this property is a car lot. It's within the city limits, but there's the car lot immediately opposite Highway 95 of this property, and just north of that is the Lowe's. So I don't believe that a commercial, for staff to recommend approval to this is that far out in left field to say in this immediate vicinity we have a number of commercial items, commercial uses already in place. Granted, there is a residential property to the west, and ultimately this is in the commission's hands to determine whether it is a good idea, using common sense, to place this use in this specific property. But definitely, staff looked at all of these items in proposing this recommendation.
Well, I'd just like to make one other point. I'm all for businesses. I'm all for taking land and developing it and using it. Well, I'll put it just blankly, what you can make the most money on. I'm all for that. But I'm all for protecting people in the area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Steele? Mr. Steele, you have a question? Or no, I'm sorry.
It's okay, but I'd like Lenny just to address a couple of the concerns because he is the landowner, his parents are the landowner.
Okay.
They have stuff.
All right, thank you. Please come forward.
My question is, right now it's currently zoned residential recreation. As far as I understand, that does include a use of an RV park, mobile home, under the recreation. Okay, and then medium density is under the general plan. What would medium density housing be? Would that be height limitations? Would it be condos, apartments?
My head. Yeah.
Low density would be single family housing like Lake Ridge is, correct?
I believe Lake Ridge is also medium density residential land use designation. So medium density residential is one of our urban development areas. So it does allow for pretty small lots. The actual density of dwelling units per acre, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, I've had people inquire about the property too, as far as mobile home park, RV park, which is very needed in Lake Havasu. All the spaces are full again. So that would be an option if we did not do the storage units. If I lived there, I would prefer storage units over an RV park, most definitely.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Commissioner Kelly, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Well, earlier, I was asking about what the current zoning was, because I didn't see it on the map. But I was looking at page 27 of the agenda book. It appeared that commercial zoning compliance with what's surrounding it. Residential, low, medium, and high density. So, but what I, and since I haven't...
Turn on your mic.
I'm not aware of, I haven't seen this area, so I can't speak with the same as some of you people who have seen the traffic issues. But I can't imagine that, according to the traffic engineer, that a storage unit would have more activity daily than any residential area. You know, it seems to me that there's going to be a traffic concern regardless of what goes in there eventually, especially if it's medium or high density housing. That's going to bring a lot of people, a lot of vehicles. So that concern, I don't, it's going to pop up sooner or later. What I see is that the staff has vetted this, and on page 19 of our book, I believe it is, 19B, it says the proposed action and effect will comply with the Mojave County General Plan and the Virgin River Communities Area Plan is amended by this item, and that's really what we're tasked with here. And staff recommended approval, and I can't imagine that there's not other agencies that you have to satisfy, am I right? So this is just the zoning issue only is what we're concerned with. So I just wanted to make that apparent, that the staff has vetted this, recommended it, and that's my comment.
Okay, Commissioner Meal.
Question, statement for staff. Being the length of this conversation, and this is just the first part of this puzzle, has it occurred to staff and to legal, maybe the rules and regulations and laws may be a little bit antiquated?
Chairman Jackson, Commissioner Meal, that may have occurred, and oftentimes ordinances, as I review them from a legal standpoint, I do see that they are archaic. However, there are processes in which that have to be complied with in order to change them. And staff has to work under the current rules as they are.
I understand that.
The question for staff when a proposal like this is presented to staff is, can it be done? They recommend approval if it can be done. They recommend denial if it can't be done under the current rules. Once it comes before this commission, the question becomes, should it be done? And that's the determination that this commission has to make on both of these issues today.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have a motion for item 2A?
I make a motion, we approve item 2A.
Have a motion by Commissioner Barlow. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Kelly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No.
May have to take a roll call vote. I think I heard 3 nays.
Chairman Jacks,
Yes.
Commissioner Barlow,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Hassett,
Yes.
was that a yes?
That was a yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Mule,
No.
Commissioner Martin,
Yes.
Commissioner Abbott,
No.
Commissioner Alexander,
Yes.
Commissioner Morse is not here, and then Vice Chair Gillette?
No.
Okay, the ayes have it. It's passed.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to item 2B.
Item 2B is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 120-05-144 from an RE residential recreation zone to a C2H highway commercial zone to allow for an indoor boat and recreational storage facility. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay, thank you. We have the applicant available. Any questions or any comments by the applicant?
Commissioners, thank you. The only comment I'd have is we are, like we talked about previously, willing to accept a condition that limits traffic going into the neighborhood. From our standpoints, that is what we can do to mitigate some of the concerns, and that's what we're here to do, is try and work with the neighbors the best we can. So certainly if the language says something along the lines that if it's only going to be permitted if we do that, then we'd be happy to accept that. And then I would be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Do you intend to meet with these residents and discuss the situations that they're bringing up?
We'd absolutely be happy to do that, to set up an additional neighborhood meeting just voluntarily on our part to show them a final plan and to show them how we're trying to mitigate their concerns with the stacking coming into the site and also limiting the turn access getting out of the site into their neighborhood. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions by commissioners? No. Thank you.
One other thing I would like to just bring up, because it was a comment about surrounding land uses. Almost all the highway fronting uses are commercial uses. Just down the street, the next improved property to the south is in fact a large storage unit. The 90 acres that sits south of this is land plan for commercial and mixed uses. Right now the general plan calls for a general commercial use. Everything across the street, county sheriff's office, there's 2 vacant sites across the street that are already zoned for commercial uses. So it is quite common on highway to be zoned for commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We do have several people wishing to speak on this item. Mr. Bob Rugland. Any other comments that you'd like to make, Mr. Rugland?
I really don't have any additional comments. The comments that I made on the
2A.
first section A would pertain to this as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Lenny Mazadorf. Any other comments that you'd have?
No more comments.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 2B? Yes. Come on forward, please.
It just seems that all the comments, all the discussion has been on them leaving the complex and going out onto the highway. When they are leaving, after they're done for the day and they're bringing it back there, the majority of them are going to be coming up London Bridge Road. They're going to turn on Chenoweth, And then they're going to either come into our track off of London or Kensington. They're not going to be coming where they're going to turn left on the highway. The best, if I had a boat and I was coming in, that's the way I would come in. That's the best way to get into their facility, is not off the main highway. That was never addressed. They only addressed the barrier they're going to put up that forces them to turn left as they come, turn right as they come out of their complex. They're not addressing all the many boats and trailers and stuff that are going to come off of London Bridge onto Chenoweth into our into our track. That wasn't ever addressed. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 2B? Okay, close the public hearing. Does any commissioner have questions or comments at this time? Yes, Commissioner Martin.
Okay, I'd like to clarify, because I was under the impression that the last public speaker's concern was going to be addressed, where there would be no access through their subdivision to the storage units.
Again, we're willing to do 100% of what's in our power. She brings up a good point, and I can't argue
Right,
that.
and I don't want the public to think we don't care. I do care.
I
and
understand.
I do want their concerns addressed.
I understand, and what we can address, we will. That's a traffic issue where they're coming over public roads with taxpayer dollars. I mean, we can't stop them from doing that. If we could, we would, but we can't stop them from doing that. So I don't know what we could do to mitigate that part of it.
The barrier that we were referring to, does that prohibit them from coming through London and?
It can only guide them out of our site. We can't put a barrier onto public land that guides them into our site. Once we get off of our own site property, we can't do anything about that. We'd be happy to accept a condition that the public somehow is going to make some kind of median or whatever it may be to block access going through there, but we can't do that. So all we can do is build something on our site that directs traffic out of our site and not into their neighborhood, just directly out to the highway.
Okay, question for staff. Can we put a condition that no ingress or egress from the storage unit facility through Lake Ridge, through Hyde Park and Kensington and London?
Chairman Jacks, Commissioner Martin, I believe that would be a tough condition to be able to enforce. We could definitely, as has been mentioned, we can install on, or we can add the condition that a right turn exit or an exiting right turn only be part of the conditions onto Hyde Park Road. As far as restricting any access to the subdivision to the west, I don't see a way that could be added as a condition and then enforced. Frankly, one reason is if a resident of the subdivision wants to use the storage unit there, we'd be restricting that resident from using his roads in order to get there, and that's. I think I'm getting a little bit off base there, but to answer the question simply, no, we couldn't enforce a restriction to prevent access to the subdivision. We could enforce a condition to place a right turn only exit for the development, which would basically be what's known as a pork chop that forces a right turn coming out of the development onto Hyde Park Road, so that they wouldn't be able to make a left turn going into the subdivision. I don't know if that. I hope that helped answer the question.
No, not really.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions by any of the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I know that the thing that is justifying this, or what is being said that is justifying this, is the fact that across the street is a car dealership, and there's also Lowe's, so it's kind of commercial right there. However, the one thing that nobody is saying is all of these have access to 95. You come and go to all these properties with access to 95. Therefore, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve with the condition that ingress and egress is only from 95.
How are you going to enforce it?
Does staff have a comment on that?
That cops won't enforce it.
He's asking if it's possible to enforce that. Is it possible to make that the condition of the approval?
No.
Well, they have to get it from ADOT.
So it's possible to make that a condition of the approval from this commission, but it's also going to be contingent on whether they can get that approval from ADOT. You can
That is
impose
correct.
the condition requiring them to get ingress and egress. The approval is contingent upon them getting ingress and egress from ADOT on the highway.
Then I'll amend my motion to say that.
Would you repeat that motion then?
Make a motion to approve with the condition that with approval from ADOT, ingress and egress is only allowed from 95.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye. Opposed.
We don't need to have a roll call vote.
Chairman Jacks,
Nay.
Commissioner Barlow,
Nay.
Commissioner Kelly,
It's
Commissioner Hassett,
Nay.
Commissioner Mill,
No.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Abbott,
Aye.
Commissioner Alexander,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gillette,
Aye.
the nays have it.
It did or did not?
The nays have it, this motion.
The ayes have it? Okay.
So where does that leave us?
Any comments by staff?
Chairman Jacks, thank you. Yes, so the commission has the opportunity at this point to either keep the denial recommendation of a rezone for this specific item, or there's the option to propose another motion. Currently, the general plan amendment is recommending approval, and as it stands right now, the recommendation for the rezone would be a denial. So the commission can either leave it that way, or an alternate recommendation can be proposed as well.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve to be with the condition that a right turn exit only onto Hyde Park Avenue.
If I may, just for clarification, could it, and I believe what Commissioner Barlow is intending to do is to allow an entrance on Hyde Park, but that the exits be right only.
Correct.
So if I may, just for clarification, that the exit on Hyde Park be a right turn only.
Yes.
And I guess the question I have with the prior motion that we had would put us in a denial situation. Does that conclude that motion and we can move forward with Commissioner Barlow's motion, or we have an issue here?
The prior motion was made, that motion was denied, and so the new motion is available, yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Wait, can we clarify what?
On Commissioner Barlow's, would you repeat it, please?
The motion is to approve with a right turn exit only onto Hyde Park Avenue.
Do we have a second? I don't have a second, so motion never gets started, fails.
Motion can,
No.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It seems to me that there's two things here. One is the traffic, and one is the citizens who have purchased their homes with the intention of not being next to something commercial. And I just don't know if, unless we make it so it's like all the other commercial, and if it's going to be commercial all along 95, you can bet that those commercial properties are going to have their ingress and egress from 95. They're not going to be putting commercial along 95 that you've got to go through a residential neighborhood to get to. So somebody has to start it. Somebody has to say this is the way it has to be. And I would like for that to be us.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Well, I think one of the issues we're looking at between general commercial and the C2H, we've got vehicles versus boats and RVs that could potentially go through Hyde Park. And I'd rather see a vehicle go through Hyde Park than an RV or a boat and trailer lined up, cutting through there. So I think if we denied the C2H and just kept it general commercial, their chances are better traffic and safety wise in my eyes.
Okay. I would like to propose that I could second the motion that was made by Mr. Barlow, Commissioner Barlow, and we'd be able to vote on it. Is that appropriate? Okay. I'm going to second the motion by Commissioner Barlow, and we'll put us into a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No. No.
Okay. Let's take a roll call vote.
Chairman Jacks,
Yay.
Commissioner Barlow,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Commissioner who?
Kelly.
no. Commissioner Hassett,
Yes.
Commissioner Meal,
No.
Commissioner Martin,
No.
Commissioner Abbott,
No.
Commissioner Alexander,
No.
Commissioner Morris is not here, Vice Chairman Gillette.
No.
The noes have it.
Motion fails. Okay.
Chairman Jacks, not to belabor this much more, but if I may just check or make a suggestion of calling the applicant up to see if they would be opposed to the access being on 95. Definitely, as has been mentioned, some of the concern is the congestion right close to the neighborhood. If the applicant is amenable to access being only on 95, perhaps that would help the commission in making that decision.
Okay.
Well, I think it's exiting as well that we're concerned about, not just ingress, but egress.
Ingress and egress.
Correct, and by limiting the access to 95, you would be removing that ingress and egress off of Hyde Parkway, so it would lessen the traffic on that main access into the neighborhood.
I thought we addressed that previously, and we're told that we can't control that, or it couldn't be done. So I'm not clear.
Sorry, and that's my fault. I apologize for not making that clear. Depending on where you place the access, that's where the traffic will go. By placing, they could still drive through the neighborhood to get to 95 to then turn into the development. However, typical traffic patterns and driver mannerisms would lead you to believe that they would come down. They would not make the turns through the subdivision in order to get onto 95 to then access the development. So while we can't make a condition of you cannot access you cannot allow drivers into the subdivision, we can make the condition that your access either needs to be a right turn, as has been done, coming off so that it directs traffic away from the subdivision, or that access along that subdivision access road would be restricted, forcing the access to be on 95 and then come in that way.
So can we stipulate a condition where ingress and egress is strictly to and from 95?
That's what we just did.
That was the motion.
That was the motion that you guys denied.
No, but that was coming in.
No, ingress and egress means coming and going.
That was the motion.
Can I make a
Hey,
comment?
Commissioner Alexander.
Although I'm in favor of the rezone to the commercial from the residential, I'm not in favor of infringing on the residents' comfort. And therefore, I think the first motion that was made was appropriate. I think the burden should be on the developer. And if ADOT does not agree to that, then I think he needs to find a different use for his property. That's just my comment and how I feel about it.
Okay. Any other comments, commissioners? Do we have is that a motion then, Commissioner Alexander? Commissioner Gillette?
Is it appropriate for me to make my same motion again?
We should go
Commissioner
right.
Gillette and Chairman Jacks, it wouldn't be appropriate for you to make your same motion again that was denied. However, someone who voted on the opposite side could make a motion for reconsideration of your motion.
Do that.
I think we should go to item 3.
We're trying to finish up here on item 2B.
Well, we have another option, actually. We can postpone this, table this, until the developer has had an opportunity to speak with ADOT to find out what the possibilities are, and perhaps come back before us with that option in mind.
Is that possible to do, staff?
That's a good, yeah. Make that motion.
I make a motion, we table 2B until our next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, before we go too far down this road, you'd still have to go back to the original motion and ask that that be reconsidered. And at that time, after the commission votes to reconsider the item, then you can go ahead and make a motion to continue or postpone until the next meeting or a following meeting.
Okay, so we would make a statement or a motion to reconsider
Yes,
the
sir.
motion on item 2B.
Yeah, reconsider item 2B.
Okay. Making that motion, do we have a second? You make that motion? Okay, we have a second?
Restate the motion, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, just,
Restate the motion.
okay, has anyone made a motion from the opposing view to ask for reconsideration? Because if that has not been done, then we can go ahead and go to your motion of postponement. But I have not heard a motion to reconsider on the opposing votes. Is that how you understand it, Jeff?
So if we want to postpone it and we want to reconsider that first motion that was made that died, there will still have to be a motion for reconsideration. So it's essentially a two-step process. You'll need to do a motion for reconsideration, and then you can postpone that motion for reconsideration,
Okay.
if that's what the commission wants.
So do we have a motion for reconsideration to move us forward?
I'll move for reconsideration of the first motion.
Okay, and a second? Somebody?
Second.
And we have a second. So Commissioner Alexander with a motion and Commissioner Martin with a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Opposed?
Aye.
One opposition, motion passes. Now we can move on with the
My
next.
motion, right.
Commissioner Gillette?
And my motion is to table this until our next meeting to give the developer an opportunity to speak to ADOT about the possibility of the ingress and egress from 95.
I'll
Do we have a
second the
second?
motion.
And have a second by Commissioner Alexander. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, that moves on to item 3.
I have a quick question for staff. Being we have several members that aren't from a subject area, how many single-family residences are on Hyde Park Road?
200.
Does anybody have a clue?
Something like 100 and something. In that subdivision, there's 100 and something.
I want Hyde Park.
And Commissioner Meal, I don't mean any disrespect, and I know we'd like to get as much information as possible, but given that the motion to continue the item has passed, certainly staff can look into that for when the issue is brought back up, and so I appreciate that.
And to let people know, but it would help clarify things.
Sure. And so I would just, and I think staff has taken the note that they'll look into that, and that information will be provided when this item comes back up.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 3, please.
Item number 3 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel numbers 306-53080 and 306-53081 from an AR 36A agricultural residential 36-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR 2A agricultural residential with 2-acre minimum lot size zone and AR 4A agricultural residential 4-acre minimum lot size zone and an AR 15A agricultural residential 15-acre minimum lot size zone to allow for a minor land division and to bring the properties into compliance in the Golden Valley vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant available? Applicant here? No, applicant is not present. Open up.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. We also did receive 2 letters of opposition along with,
okay.
yeah, and a response from the applicant.
Okay, and we do have those. Commissioners have those. Thank you. We'll open up the public hearing. Do we have anyone wishing to speak on item 3? Hearing none, seeing none. Close the public hearing. Does any commissioner have questions or comments this time for item 3?
I do.
Mr. Martin?
Can we just confirm with staff that the current property has legal access?
Yes, so on the north portion of the site, I believe that is Uncar, and then on the west, they'll have access as well, and then they are providing for a road to cross along the basically the property line that currently exists.
Okay, just wanted to verify because we've run into some situations.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gillette?
Doesn't this open this piece of property to doing a like a backward subdivision? I mean, we're allowing all these parcels to be made They're not asking to make the parcels now, but if we put this zoning on, then they will be able to put a lot more than just a few parcels out of this 36 acres.
So part of it is that we do have those minimum lot sizes in place. So if they were to try and split them again, they would have to come before you all as well.
Only if they're doing over 5, right?
If they're doing 5, or even if they were doing 5 or less, all of these parcels have a minimum lot size of basically what they're going to be when they're split. So for example, if that 15-acre parcel to the north was to be split again, they would have to come before you again because they would have to rezone it to a lower density.
Yeah, well...
Chairman Jackson and Commissioner Gillette, just to clarify the comments from staff, in order to get that properly zoned, yes, they would have to come back before you. But if they were, as Commissioner Gillette pointed out, if they were basically subdividing it in smaller increments, they wouldn't necessarily have to come before you because they could just record the split.
Exactly.
However, once they apply for building permits, they would not be in compliance with the zoning ordinance, and therefore they would get denied.
If they did it a little bit at a time, which is what happens. That's what happens. I mean, we give them these splits on these large acreages, and then the next thing you know, it's all full with people because they have sold them off.
And legally, there's not really a mechanism for the commission or the board to prevent that from happening, the recorded splits. But what the mechanism for enforcement of the zoning ordinance is once those splits that should have come before the board come up and they're not in compliance with the zoning ordinance and they attempt to build on the property, that's when they would get denied by the building department.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes. How do I turn this on? It's on. Okay. All right. I have been here.
Would you give us your name?
I have been here since 1980. We built the Ocotillo on Highway 68. I also, my address, Sandra Kaplan, 7780 West Dunker Road, Golden Valley, Arizona. My property is the one, you'll have a little jag there, and then I'm off of Egar. And then I'm the next property down, the next acreage. But the thing is, these people have come in and they have decided to talk to us and not to you. And what they want to do is take this plot, and they're starting at the back of it, not at the front. At the front, which comes off of Egar, are 3 big washes. They're not even showing those on the list. Then they're going to take the back half and divide it into 5 parcels. And then they told us they're going to take the front half and make those 2 acres, I believe. But they haven't done anything yet except tear down one trailer that was sitting there on Egar, or on Unker. And it's just, I love our valley. I've been here forever. I got flooded out when the people that bought Marshall's house, which was on the other side of Elliott Road, which it's not listed there. But Mr. Marshall made a moat. That moat turned the wash into my yard. I had to put a $20,000 stone wall in to keep it from washing through again, which is still there. And nobody cares. Nobody cares about the washers. They just feel they're going to come in it and do it. And that's what they do. And hopefully, I feel that they didn't show up because if they don't show up, no one questions them, right?
Wrong.
So I think they need further. The way I read this is that he's going to take those 2 parcels and make 2 15 parcels, or 380, and I can't see without these glasses. Take 380 and 381 and break them down into parcels. That isn't the way they originally planned it. And the new people that live on the end of Elliott Road and down on the end, they're going to get washed out like I did. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any commissioner questions or comments? Okay, anyone else wishing to speak on item 3? All right, the chair will now call for a motion for item 3. We have a motion on item 3? No?
Motion to approve per staff recommendation.
And Commissioner Martin has a motion, looking for a second. Second by Commissioner Kelly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 4.
Item number 4 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessors parcel number 207-40018 from an AR 36A agricultural residential 36-acre minimum lot size zone to a C2 5A general commercial 5-acre minimum lot size zone and a C2 19A general commercial 19-acre minimum lot size zone to allow for a minor land division in the Yucca vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Yes. Yes. You choose to speak on the item, sir? Oh, okay, that's Mr. Mickelson. Mr. Mickelson, come on forward and give us your address.
Good morning, staff. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the ladies and gentlemen that work so hard to do what you're doing. It's a tough, tough job. I can appreciate that, and I want to thank you for it. My name is Joseph D. Mickelson. I live at 7888 Seeley Drive, Lake Havasu Heights, Arizona. I'm one of the original people when the road was put in there that's there today as we speak. I'm 90, going on 91 years old, and I'm very astute, very up to par. I'm looking forward to support Mojave County and all the things that we stand for. I appreciate the hard work that you do, every one of you. It's a tough job. I've been there and seen a lot of it in my 91 years of age. This August, I'll be 91. So anyway, I would like to say that I want to develop this property and want this approved in the worst way for several reasons. I have a family. I have 3 sons and a caretaker, and I want to take and deed this over to the property owners at one time as a gift for my remembrance to Mojave County and their future residents of this county. And I appreciate your consideration. If there's any questions, I'd be available to answer them. And I want you to know that I've been a law enforcement agent officer since 1938, 39, 40, 50, 1950. And I've been chosen as a sheriff deputy by Ronald Reagan and Ed Meese, who later became our attorney general. We grew up together, him and his wife and I. And also Sonoma County, I was sworn again as a internal investigator. Yes, internal investigator for the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department. It's a little different than being a deputy sheriff. You're in charge of a lot of deputies, internal affairs. So I bring law and order to Mojave County 100%. We can always use more law enforcement and the right way to go. And I want to thank you very much for considering this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your services.
Yes. And congratulations on being 91.
Do we have any questions
It
for?
was an honor to serve our country in Korea as a combat medic and a rifleman in 1950. I followed General MacArthur in there and did my whole career of 2 years in the United States Army as a medic and a rifleman in a combat outfit. And I got out alive, the best medal a person could have. And I do have rank.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations.
For your service.
Any questions? Okay, any other individuals wishing to speak on item 4? Okay, closing the public hearing. Chair will now call for a motion on item 4.
I'll make a motion to approve for staff recommendation.
I second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Abbott, second by Commissioner Gillette. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item 5.
Item number 5 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 33014-089 from an AR-10A agricultural residential 10-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR-5A agricultural residential 5-acre minimum lot size zone to allow for a minor land division in the Lake Juniper vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard condition.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Applicant is not present. Open up public hearing. Do we have anyone wishing to speak on item 5? Seeing or hearing none. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on item 5? Hearing none, the chair will now call for a motion on item 5.
I make a motion that we approve with the staff recommendations.
Motion by Commissioner Gillette, looking for a second.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Barlow. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion carries. For item 6, the applicant has requested that item 6 be continued to August 11th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission. Right, so we'll move on to item 7.
Item number 7 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 204-17024 from an AR-36A agricultural residential 36-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR-8A agricultural residential 8-acre minimum lot size zone and an AR-5A agricultural residential 5-acre minimum lot size zone to allow for a minor land division in the Cedar Hills vicinity. The applicant is seeking to create 5 parcels with this rezone. We have received 1 letter of opposition on this item, and staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Thank you. Is the applicant available? You wish to speak on the item? Okay, thank you. Okay, I do have several people that do have comments for item 7. Start with Mr. John Stang. If you'd give us your name and address, please, sir.
Do we have something I can show this? Thank you. Yeah, my name's John Stang. Thank you. I live at 3202 Cedardale Court. You have a letter that I wrote out and submitted, and my main concern in the division of these 36-acre parcels is that we have only one entrance and one exit onto Mountain Shadow Road. I was to the road department and they indicated that that's all that's required before you do any more zone divisions in this area. I request that you find an alternate exit out of this area. During the recent fire, my wife and I, we had our RV ready to go in about 30 minutes, but it brought to our attention, had it been over the hill on the BLM land, we had no way to get out. I think I provided enough information as to BLM land and state land that is available just to our south, I believe, that could be utilized. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for?
I have a comment for the applicant or the gentleman there. One of the requirements that staff is making, that road right-of-ways shall be dedicated and granted as necessary to provide legal access to all parcels. So that, if this is approved, that will be a requirement. I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing and I didn't understand. They're going to require legal access to all parcels if this split is approved. I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Staff, could you help us out?
I know the building department said that they only had to provide one entrance and exit. Tim will clarify.
That all, if this is approved, that legal access will be required to the parcels.
I'm asking it not be approved.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Until an exit is provided for the 25 residents that you already have living in the tract that I live in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We have Mr. Dominic DeRacy.
Good morning, or yes, it's still morning. My name is Dominic DeRace. I am a landowner of a parcel that's just to the southeast, parcel 204-17-001. As you can see on the document, I was unable to actually figure out where this parcel 024 was until today, because the only document we received in the mail was the one that I'm showing up here. I did call the number of the applicant. I never got the courtesy of a call back, which I found a little surprising, but that's just, I guess, my own opinion. When we purchased this property 2 years ago, we felt that it was in a beautiful, beautiful area, and we have a beautiful view of the mountains, beautiful view of the other side of the valley. And we do see occasional homes, but we figure, you know, one home on every 40 acre is kind of okay. And I was actually offered and I was shown the property in question. There were 4 available lots, which were called New York 1, New York 2, New York 3, New York 4. I believe one of them was sort of in contract. But so, I mean, possibly I could have purchased that one, but one of my questions is that the well for those 4 40-acre lots is on the current property. So I'm wondering what that's going to do to the other owners in the 3 other New York lots that they have to share now with 5 more people. I mean, obviously, it's not directly my concern, and one of the reasons I didn't buy one of those lots is because there was a shared well. My only concern is that when we do go to the property, I mean, my partner and myself, that we enjoyed the very peaceful and quietness. And so anyway, I just wanted the quality of life there. I would recommend against such development and ask why people would like. My question would be, why is this being proposed? And the only question I can, the answer I could probably figure on that would be that it's just for financial purposes and gain, as opposed to keeping the area safe. And I do agree with this gentleman that the only road access, and I understood what Commissioner Abbott said, legal access, but the only road that goes to that property at this point is Mountain Shadow Road, which, if you increase the number of people there, could be an issue with the fires to be in that area. Some of the neighbors have mentioned that concern already, that they only have one exit possible. I guess that's it, unless anybody has a question for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any questions? Okay. Yes, please, come on down.
Good morning, Honorable Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Kathy Tackett Hicks. I'm acting as the owner's agent. I said I wouldn't speak because I wasn't aware that there was any opposition. I did, in fact, receive this one opposition letter. There was no phone number on it for me to call that gentleman, Mr. Stengel. And I apologize if you left a message because I have been out of town, but I do not have one. So I am really good at calling back. So if you have any questions after this, I'm happy to speak with you. But let me address a few of the items. First of all, this is part of a 4-parcel grouping, New York 1, 2, 3, and 4, that does have a shared well, which is really nice. Each one of those owners, this one included, has a 25% access to that water. There are already existing easements across the lot to allow for water line extension and power to that well. There's 2 sites. One has the well, one has a water tank up high. And those owners right now just use a generator if they need water because it's not required on a routine basis every day. So that works well for them. With this lot split, there's going to be no ability for this owner to get any more than the 25%. I spoke in depth with Mr. Wade on this, Jeffrey Wade, the applicant, or the owner on this. He doesn't have an intent to try to draw a lot of water. His goal is to take advantage of the opportunity to create a few more lots. If you see the size, the 5 and 10 acre size lots is consistent with the properties and the development to the west. I did the public report on that property several years ago. I'm very familiar with it. 5 acre lots are completely consistent with that type of development. These parcels were created into 36 acres all across the county. The fact that they have one existing right-of-way access is much greater than many other parcels that we see coming across here. It is a county-maintained road as well, which is really nice. I think the existing right-of-way is 50 or 60 feet on that access, which is more than sufficient, and the county would not warrant any additional right-of-way for these extra 4 lots. When he spoke about the beauty of the area, I would agree. The area is beautiful. This particular site is very mountainous, or very, topographic challenges and stuff on it. So each one of those home sites would be, further protected. You try to put the homes in little coves or maybe on high areas. The beauty of the site will not be impacted or changed. Commissioner Abbott addressed the issue on the right-of-ways. And of course, as part of the parcel plat, we'll have a surveyor go out and really define where those lots might be located. And then he will be required to dedicate to the county the required easements and access so that those lots can be served. There is no, I just spoke with the owner yesterday again. He doesn't have a desire to go out and start building homes right now, but what he does have a desire to do is to understand at the very end what the parcel potential is, so that if he has to grade a road, he's only going to grade it once and not go in there haphazard and just start grading for a couple of sites and other things. So the process that he's taken to apply for a rezone is exactly consistent with what the county requires and what I think is good planning. I do not see any problems with this, but I'm really happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Does this property owner own the other 3 lots or parcels?
No, he does not.
He does not.
He does not. So on his particular lot, and there's legal access and rights of way for the existing well and the tank. So it does cross on his lot. It's on his property.
But this gives him the potential to create 4 more lots, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
Anyone else wishing to speak on item 7? All right, close the public hearing. The chair will now call for a motion.
I make a motion we approve with the staff's recommendations.
Motion
Second
by
the motion.
Commissioner Gillette. Second
Second the motion.
by Commissioner Abbott. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item 8.
Item number 8 is an evaluation of an amendment to the Mojave County zoning ordinance, section 42, the sign ordinance, to allow for larger on-premises signs for commercial and industrial zones and to make minor corrections to the ordinance. Back in May, the Board of Supervisors directed staff to review the sign ordinance to determine the feasibility of increasing on-premise sign areas and heights for signs along the I-40 corridor. After taking a look at it, staff determined that allowing an increase to the maximum height and or size of a sign through a special use permit provided a way for larger signs to be accommodated while also allowing neighboring property owners to provide input. This provision is limited to signs located along federally identified interstates to allow for larger signs in areas with higher speed limits, such as the I-40 and I-15 corridor and the potential future inclusion of the I-11 corridor. Staff also made other minor adjustments to the sign ordinance for clarity. We moved some of the sections around so they made a little bit more sense for someone reading through the ordinance. But most of the changes were in that on-premise signs in commercial and industrial zones. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Open a public hearing. Anyone wishing to make comments on item 8? Hearing none. Does any commissioner have a question or comment this time on item 8? Chair will now call for a motion for item 8.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Martin for a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gillette. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That moves us on to item 9. The monthly reports will be sent out today to the Planning and Zoning Commission via email. Moves us on to item 10. Commissioner comments limited to announcements, availability, attendance at conferences and seminars, requests for agenda items for future meetings, and requests for reports from staff. Do we have any commissioner comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to compliment and thank the staff for putting in your requirements, the egress and ingress. I appreciate that very much. And also the fact that you are looking at the flood zones. I think that's extremely important. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd also like to comment and thank you to the staff for all of your assistance today. It was invaluable. Thank you so much. Any other comments? No? Okay, that moves us on to item 11, call to the public. Do we have anyone wishing to speak?
Mr. Chair, I think
Yes.
that a member of the staff wanted to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I just, I had forgotten about call to the public. So before the meeting closed out, there was one item we missed, the approval of the June 9th meeting. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention before we
Oh,
close.
thank you very much. That would be back all the way back at the beginning.
I mean, you don't want to do this all over?
It would be a approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for our last month's meeting?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion by Commissioner Gillette, second.
Second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Alexander. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much for catching that. Okay, item 11, call to the public. Hearing none, I request a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
And a second. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
John Hassett has left the conference.